everyone, welcome. Hope you're having a fantastic day out there. Uh, Sound of Freedom's this movie. Have you seen it? Have you heard about it? It seems to have a bit of confliction with what's going on. Um, Check this one out with me. There's something terribly wrong with the media's reaction to The Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom is based on a true story of an ex-agent who saved hundreds of children from. Meanwhile, Bloomberg, the Washington Post hired a pro-advocate to attack the movie and associate it with 20th of July 2023. The Sound of Freedom movie is based on a true story of Tim Ballard, a government agent who quits his job in order to rescue children from in Colombia. Directed by can't say that, sorry. Sound of Freedom is not your typical Hollywood movie. It was released in a Utah-based Angel Studio, a company specializing in faith-based productions. The movie was actually completed over 5 years ago in 2018 and was slated to be distributed with 20th Century Fox. However, when the studio was bought by the Walt Disney Company, The Sound of Freedom was shelved indefinitely. Well, we know what Disney is about, don't we? Apparently Disney was much more preoccupied with making movies that children with propaganda rather than releasing a movie exposing. Luckily for the filmmakers, they were able to buy the distribution rights back from Disney through equity funding, and they've managed to get the film released on July 4th, 2023. Almost immediately, the movie was met with a bizarre barrage of bad reviews where buzzwords appear in nearly every article, as if all of these journalists, propagandists, received the same memo. The movie itself does not mention or anything even remotely related to it, merely puts the story of Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railway, the organization he created to fight child. However, mass media pundits made it a point to associate and make this word association. They also decided that the movie was controversial. Why was that? Well, for starters, the media really does not like some people associated with the movie, starting with its star, Jim Chavez. Controversial endorsements. Jim Chavez with Mel Gibson during the filming of Passion for Christ in 2004. Prior to The Sound of Freedom, Jim Chavez was mostly known for playing the role of Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. The least one can say is this role took a toll on Chavez. During filming, he was actually whipped, got his shoulder dislocated, suffered pneumonia and hypothermia. Oh, he was also hit by lightning. Indeed, while filming the Sermon on the Mount, Chavez was struck by lightning, which led to 2 heart surgeries, including open heart surgery. The Sound of Freedom, Chavez's character also has Christ-like qualities, especially when tearfully looks at the camera and says, "God's children are not for sale." While the movie itself stays away from the conspiracy theories, the elite wants it suppressed by any means necessary. Jim Chavez just goes all in at every chance he gets. In the following interview, Chavez directly refers to the satanic elite and the harvesting of. Another major endorser of The Sound of Freedom is Mel Gibson. Well, that's rather appropriate because one of the most memorable lines he ever uttered was, "They can take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom." Braveheart. When he screamed those words as Sir William Wallace in the 1995 movie Braveheart, Mel Gibson was one of the biggest movie stars in the world. However, even at the peak of success, Gibson found a way to anger people with these massive truth bombs. In July 1995 interview with Playboy, Gibson said President Bill Clinton was a low-level opportunist and someone who was telling him what to do. He also stated that Oxford University Rhodes Scholarship was established for young men and women who want to strive for and was a campaign for. During the 1998 interview, Gibson alluded to a dark satanic side of Hollywood. A few years later, after some of his drunken tirades, notably about were leaked in the press, Gibson was shunned and blacklisted from Hollywood. Well, he stayed away from Hollywood production for years. Gibson resurfaced to openly endorse The Sound of Freedom, which is not a Hollywood movie. So what is all the fuss about? Here's an actual look at the movie. Sound of Freedom. While The Sound of Freedom is said to be faith-based, there is no religious preaching or political messaging throughout the movie. It simply wants to make one important point. Child is bad, and somehow the mass media deemed this movie to be controversial. To drive the point across, the movie doesn't shy away from depicting scenes that are barely watchable. For instance, in one gut-wrenching scene, an old drunken tourist stumbles into a room where a terrified little girl is forced to wait on him, and nobody flies in to save the day. The drunken shuts the blinds as the viewers realize that nothing will stop the unspeakable things that will happen in the cursed room. These scenes shamelessly tug at the heartstrings and that are nearly impossible to watch. However, they do happen in real life, every day, thousands of times a day. Not only that, child is a booming industry that keeps raking in record amounts of profits. As he stated in the movies, drugs can only be sold a single time. However, children can be sold several times a night. By forcing viewers to face these harsh realities, the movie sets itself apart from nearly all Hollywood productions that would never tackle such topics. The main reason Hollywood is rampant with the worst one can imagine. Some critics complained that the movie was too straightforward, that they did not like the fact that there was no surprise twist, that a hero remained an unwavering, incorruptible hero that just wants to see the go down. Well, I guess they could have been pleased if a hero revealed himself to be a all along or something like that. But these professional critics should have realized that they were not watching a Marvel movie where random, unpredictable events just happen to fill airtime. Sound of Freedom is about telling a true story and exposing a horrific reality. For instance, the movie begins with real and chilling footage of children being snatched from the streets, taken away by abductors working for these networks. These children end up in the child that are depicted in the movie. They also end up in elite that indulge in the most horrific practices known to man. For this reason, corrupt elite-owned media outlets went on a bizarre propaganda campaign to disparage Sound of Freedom. Also, you'll see soon, they were willing to go extremely low. The media's unhinged response. The Sound of Freedom, a man heroically inflates child and yet saves the children from being. The media's response, this movie is bad. What in God's name is happening here? Here's the thing, the Sound of Freedom are the bad guys. They are not misunderstood, oppressed victims who need to be coddled. They are sadistic monsters who prey on the divine nature of innocent children, and they need to be stopped. This goes against the narrative that has been prevalent in mass media in the past years. The goal, to pave the way to society where MAPs, minor attracted persons, are treated like other sexual minorities. For this reason, nearly every elite-owned media outlet in the world has published insane articles that attack the Sound of Freedom. Here's a headline from a reputed Washington Post. The second article or paragraph says, many critics have linked the Sound of Freedom to conspiracy cult. They've also been startled by its mainstream successes, but the truth is that the conspiratorial right and the Hollywood default aren't that different, which is why perhaps our polity has such a difficult rejecting. And as you can see, the article throws every single buzzword and the readers such as pro conspiratorial right, even fat. Yeah, he used the word to critic a movie about child. One can wonder, why does this reviewer hate the movie so much? If the movie was about cocaine trafficking in Colombia, would he be offended? Well, the answer is completely sickening. The author of the Washington Post article is Noah, a communications director for Protozia, uh, advocate group. So, according to their website, it supports the Minor Attracted Person Club, a notorious group that tries to normalize. Earlier this year, Rux reported that the general manager of Protozia, Protozia, sorry, I don't, yeah, Prescott Bryan, an active on board, dedicated to, who dubbed themselves, I just can't say these words. If I say these words, it's just going to get struck. Despite claiming to be motivated by a desire to eradicate abuse, the organizational efforts have dedicated themselves to crusades against child. The letter-writing campaigns start representatives demanding childlike sex dolls to be kept legal and funding research into fantasy outlets. For Redux founder Anna Statz explains, Protozia is condemned as anti-sentiment as harmful as rhetoric, and called for mass censorship across social media. Evie Sound of Freedom, critic for Bloomberg, is a sympathizer. In short, he is a, in case he's still not convinced, here's a tweet he posted in 2017. His article about the Sound of Freedom wasn't a movie review, it was a hit piece coming directly from the advocacy group. Major news outlets such as Washington Post openly talk about the side of the child. Sadly, the Washington Post was not the exception. Nearly all the single elite owned media outlet followed suit. The narrative, Sound of Freedom equals. The headline from The Guardian uses the same buzzwords as the Washington Post article, which was written by they're all funded by the same system. Of course, Canada's government-funded CBC network had to participate in the insanity after years of celebrating in schools and all the forms of child. The CBC attacked the Sound of Freedom using the same buzzwords. In a recent interview with CBC Radio, pop culture columnist, propagandist Ryhead said, "We can't say that the movie itself is made by, but certainly the political goals make it something that would rally behind. Just like racists that rallied behind without him having to say a word overtly racist. You would have only heard about this movie if you were a regular among church groups, or regularly watched Fox News, or if you followed the right-wing personalities, or if you're a part of the so-called freedom movements. But make no mistake, the movie's success has a lot to do with it being dog whistle for xenophobic pro-life types. Yes, this columnist said that the movie about child in Colombia is a dog whistle for xenophobic pro and pro-life types. In other words, this person is paid by the Canadian taxpayers to spew pro. I could post many more examples of such headlines from around the world, and they are all to improve important points. The outlets take their normal talking point from the same globalist elite source. They're on a mission to normalize, and they're willing to attack anything that goes against the agenda. Look at the work Ruth Bader Ginsburg did. She horrible. In conclusion, The Sound of Freedom is the best movie I've ever watched. Not really. Objectively, it's a well-made movie that touches an important topic. It's quite refreshing to watch. Any reasonable reviewer could have said the same and left it at that, but that's not what happened at all. Instead of objectively reviewing the movie, reviewers screeched like demons when faced with the crucifix. Sound of Freedom clearly touched a nerve, and by doing so, it managed to reveal how far the elite and its media system are willing to go to defend. Through unhinged and desperate reviews, which are outright attempts at propaganda which completely scary buzzwords, mass media outlets from around the world attempted to scare people from watching the movie for fear of being called pro. Bloomberg and Washington Post went as far as hiring to attack the movie. As a society, we truly need to reflect on the implications of such a movie by major media outlets. As usual, these propagandists use their favorite tactic, the far-rightization of the topic to scare people away. However, this issue is not about left versus right, it is about good versus evil. The most important line in the movie is God's children are not for sale. If you are somehow offended by that line, then you can go to hell. Literally. Wow. It's just sad that no one's defending the children. No one's, anytime someone tries to stand up and defend the children, they get attacked. And it's like that stuff that was done in the 70s with the Ash conformity experiment, many other experiments, how, they could trick people into doing things by just getting one or two people to do it. And people just follow the crowd. They don't want to be outcasted and made out that there's something that they're not. So anyway, thanks for watching. I have got some more videos to come. I was going to go live the other day, but I just didn't have time. I'm sorry. So wherever you are in the world, thanks for watching. You have a beautiful day. Much love. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think about it. Alright, talk to you soon. Bye now.